fully agree. And it brings us back to that question about culture versus talent. Like, what is more important?
Yeah, whenever I hear culture, I hear the word cult. And you really can't rely on resumes anymore, let's be honest, because everybody lies on a resume. They have been since the beginning of time. If you didn't know that people lie on their resume.
Welcome back to Raw AI Solutions, the podcast where we discuss how business leaders are navigating the fast-moving world of AI and digital transformation. My name is Denise Powell, and today we are joined by Daniel Akre, the CEO and founder of GigCX Talent. Welcome, Daniel.
Nice to join you, Denise.
Great to have you on board. Daniel, would you like to kick us off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. Grew up in Silicon Valley after college, worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies, and recruited into the BPO space in the late 90s to position an organization, either go public or get bought. So that was my task, and then I ended up staying because I loved it. It was helping people and customers, and aligned with my personal values. Founded a company in that same genre, in that industry, in 2005, called UNI Partners. Grew that into a $10 million company and sold it. And now I am founder and CEO of GigCX Talent. We are the world's first gig CX and/or fractional workforce, and so technology and talent solutions advisory. We provide humans from all over the world working for both the enterprise and BPOs. And so I've been doing this for about 27 years.
So that was a lot of technical talk there. But that's really, that's quite a journey. Congratulations on the sale of their company. Well, today we're exploring why even the smartest CEOs are struggling to keep their teams aligned during rapid change, and what it really takes to stay on the same page when everything is moving so fast. So, Daniel, recent studies have shown that 70% of change initiatives fail due to internal misalignment. Why do you think that is?
Lack of communication, maybe some degraded leadership, clarifying why change is happening, mission and purpose of that change, and how it will impact the organization or the enterprise, both near and short term and in the long term.
Have you seen that happen to a lot of your clients?
Yeah, I think the general human behavior is a resistance to change, and we like the familiar. So humans naturally resist that change, especially if it impacts them and their routines. So it's really critical to be able to organize the human dynamic to help everybody understand the mission and the value and the goal of why this changing is occurring, how it will impact both their departments, divisions, and themselves personally as well, and how it will benefit them personally and the organization and the industry.
Have you found with AI coming into place that people have become a lot more resistant to change because of a fear factor that AI is here to replace them?
I think there's some trepidation with AI and the replacement dynamic. But what we have found is a full acceptance of AI and how it will augment our jobs and our positions, how it will give us access to more information, data, and knowledge that will help accelerate our learning process. And we find that many people are excited for the innovation by being able to access more information quicker, faster, and more streamlined, that will allow for them to do their jobs more efficiently, more effectively, and make a larger impact on the organization, thus increasing the value of the positions that these humans are occupying.
What kind of change typically puts the most strain on alignment inside of companies that you work with?
Yeah, the unspoken internal detractors who are resistant to change, who behind the scenes want to sabotage the innovation. They want to sabotage the technology because they're really comfortable in their box, and they are unwilling to be malleable or flexible or agile with this change. The perception oftentimes is not the reality. And the perception is that it's going to take more time, more energy. I'm going to have to do, more with less, and it's just another task, and they don't pay me enough, etc. So those perceptions have to be tackled up front, um, with these people with who are primary stakeholders within the organization that have a say in the direction, whether that's IT or operations or sales or accounting, whatever that might be.
And how do you tackle that when you see that?
One-on-ones. Frank and honest and transparent discussions with the primary stakeholders. It's critical that we have ideas about how humans are interacting with each other and communicating with each other, and the natural fears that they have. And that's okay. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to have trepidation. But the organization cannot be run by individual silos. Everybody needs to be on the same page and cohesive and coherent with each other. Yeah, and so that's a critical piece.
And where do you see gaps usually form first? Do you find that's usually in leadership vision or team execution, or is it like coordination across the board?
It's critical to engage individuals, again, the primary stakeholders up front, before the announcement within the entire organization, so they understand. Nobody's shocked, nobody's surprised by the change that will be happening, the evolution of the organization. And so you create champions of change within these primary stakeholders and heads of departments and these strategic business units. Once you have them on board and those are cohesive, go forward strategy, then you announce it to the mass. And when everybody looks around and says, "This is amazing," or "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" The internal stakeholders have some direction, and they can champion the messaging, the core messaging of why the change is important and how it's going to impact the organization for the better, and its contribution to the overall evolution of the organization and how it will benefit the particular people within the organization, or
Absolutely.
not, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's so true. And the other thing is when you engage them up front, people feel like change is happening with them and not to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like any team dynamic, a sport team. If we're not all aligned and cohesive and understanding the synergies related to the team, then we have individuals that want to emerge, and then we have breakdown of the synergy, and that doesn't exist. So you have a superstar that wants to go this way, you have an all-star that wants to go this way, and then you have an all-American that wants to go another way. It never works. So the team dynamic really is a cohesive sense of all in for the purpose of success. And what does success look like, both from an individual and an organizational dynamic?
And how do you find like when change is actually getting implemented, or once it has been, the adoption of that change? How important are those change champions to the adoption, and how do you get those outliers to actually adopt that aren't really interested in doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially with AI, because everybody's, concerned about, what do I need from our organization? What will benefit us both internally and externally and impact the customer experience, as a good example. Those technologies are not going to be any good unless I get full buy-in from the people who are going to be in charge of using it, um, assimilating it, and massaging it to get the results that we want. So there needs to be ongoing training and coaching associated with the people that are involved in that technology, and a commitment to spend time, energy, and resources to adopt that change. Um, it's one of the biggest challenges today. We have enterprises that are buying AI software, multiple brands, multiple logos, and they're not utilizing a good share of that knowledge. And so there's a lot of cross pollination, a lot of crossover, a lot of unused intelligence out in the marketplace. And it's because people are still learning, they're still unfamiliar, they're still not sure. and or agreeable as to how it's going to impact the customer experience, their division, department, their people overall. So you will again always have this learning curve that either if people are all aboard, that learning curve is very high. If there's resistance, then it'll be a little less than that, of course. So
And to find out where the resistance lies quickly before actually it spreads, because one bad apple.
yeah, that's why it's critical to go out and get and create champions within the organization. They're leading the strategic business units, and being able to get not just buy-in, but also convey the mission, value, and goal of the change and how it will impact them both individually and or as within the organization. And let's be honest, a lot of a lot of solutions will replace humans. And so some jobs will be lost. And that's the unfortunate part of change. And so, but that's just the reality of growth and evolution of our businesses. So,
That's so. I was actually discussing that the other day, and one of the things is, yes, it will definitely replace some jobs, but it's also going to create other roles. Like 20 years ago, jobs that existed they don't really exist today anymore. But there's other roles that exist today that didn't exist 20 years ago. So it's an evolution, and we need to embrace it, because if we're not going to embrace it, we're just going to be left behind.
yeah, I think in terms of content moderation, where we actually have human beings out taking pictures of geographical locations, street corners, street signs, buildings. These people are being employed to actually take those pictures and upload them into the internet. Not, and then also humans are still training um, AI. Of course, you have LLMs and learning models associated with AI, but humans are still behind the inertia of that technology.
Absolutely. And it's one thing that you can rely on AI, but you still need that human element to validate actually what's coming out, because it's the prompt that you put in. We might think we're putting a correct prompt, but it might give us the wrong prompt, and the information you get back isn't actually going to be as accurate as what you would have thought. You do need that human element of validation at this point.
Yeah, we use this methodology of who's going to use it, how are they going to use it, why are they going to use it, where is that going to be implemented, and what does it mean to our organization?
I love that. That's a great approach to doing it. That's excellent. So tell me, so how do fast scaling companies balance that internal alignment? The pressure to move quickly, um, but still keep that alignment. Where do you see common missteps when they're trying to do that?
Stakeholders who are still holdouts. Honestly, it's again that natural resistance to change, and the people's unwillingness to be transparent about their trepidation and fear over the change. And so what they'll do is that process slows down. So again, go back to the sport team analogy. If you have 8 players on the field and one of them is not bought in, you're probably not going to get the best result. If somebody on the team is continually striking out or making errors, we have to replace that person for a person who's bought into the change, to bought into the innovation, who has the company goal at hand and front and center to their objectives when they're working. It's a lot of people, unfortunately, bring personal into the business when the business is the business. It's not personal. So there needs to be an organizational dynamic where everybody's on the same page. Play the game to win the game. And then if you want to go home and swim in the pool and think other things, then do that. But when you're at work, it's this massive cohesive effort of a bunch of individuals, combining all of their intelligence and effort and time to achieve an objective and a goal or multiple goals. And so that's typically so individuals who are resistant to change and are not communicating that, and unfortunately, even sabotaging that growth because of fear of maybe losing their job or their position with the organization and their influence. That we use a word called fiefdom, right? We all know the word fiefdom. These are like individual, you know, SBU leaders who just want to control their people and get paid and go home and just do that every day for the next 90 years. Well, that won't happen in today's business, especially if they're changing. And there has to be some flexibility um, if you're going to be agile.
Fully agree. And it brings us back to that question about culture versus talent. Like, what is more important?
Yeah, whenever I hear culture, I hear the word cult. So, and that's the root word, right? So we can create a culture of values of like kind thinking, and that's an important dynamic. Again, like with every sports team, we wear the color blue and white, and there's a lot of alignment with you know where we're from, what geographical location, what city do we represent, that type of thing. It's the same with the organization. Is Are we all on the same page? Are we all dialed into winning, at the business? Um, so yeah, it's that's the primary goal, is alignment.
Yeah, yeah. Um, During moments like with reorganization or growth sprints, what tools or processes do companies think are actually helping them, but they often fall short in terms of keeping the teams aligned?
Mm, tools. Yeah, I think that maybe the lack of proper training tools, proper coaching. There may be some areas that are deficient or not up to speed with what needs to be communicated, how often it needs to be communicated, um, the follow up and follow through to reinforce messaging and values, recognizing wins and losses and how that impacts the individual and the organization. And let's be honest, there's the need for support on the emotional side of change. We need to acknowledge discomfort and resistance and fatigue that might exist and encourage, the psychological development of people should feel safe about expressing their doubt or, their confusion with what's happening and what their role is within that process. So human resources usually jumps into that, but it's also, I think, leadership of the organization to be able to reinforce the confidence within his organization, of the wellness tools and the resources needed for individuals to openly express and be transparent about their fears.
You hit a really good point there about change fatigue. Um, so there's a lot of tools out there in the organization. It's almost like an overwhelming amount of tools, and now you've got AI coming in, and companies wanting to embrace everything all at once, and there's so much change happening in organizations. How do you stop the change fatigue happening inside your organization?
Yeah, boy. I think if I told you, I'd have to sell that for $1 million, right? I mean, because everybody's going through it. Everybody's, oh my God, it's another AI tool. You know, oh my God, I'm going to have to work 9 hours, today, because now we have, a whole new, initiative. So we can't overburden our people with too many tools, too many applications, um, and just dump it on them and say, this is the direction we're going without getting their buy-in and understanding and treating them um, like the professionals that they are. So it's important that in order to get buy-in, they have to agree at some point that it will benefit them, their business unit, and the organization. So again, that's the buy-in piece that is really critical. So if the captain is saying we're going this way and everybody wants to sail that way, it doesn't work. So the crew has to be on board, even if the captain might be wrong, and that's okay. We're humans, and we're all going to be wrong sometime. So, um, but yeah, it's really important to deal in the micro level with the individuals, make sure that they're well informed, that there is a safe place to be able to express their trepidation and concern about how that's happening, but just don't overburden them with, you know, too much time, energy, and effort that is needed in order to go through that adoption and growth. Otherwise, they'll be naturally resistant, right? Nobody likes to work overtime and not get paid for it. And then knowing that that technology just might be replacing me.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely. One of the companies I worked for, they had massive change fatigue, to the point where the company had almost grounded to a halt, and they were just bleeding money left, right, and center. One of the practical things we did is, I think, one of the major things, people just really want to feel heard, and so we had a team day out, not a team building day, but we had a team day out, and we had these three boards, and we said, what do you want us to continue to do, stop doing, and what would you like to see actually happen? Um, and it was all anonymous, and people go and put these sticky notes up during the day and that, and we pulled it all together. And what we found out was no one was talking to each other, but they kind of felt the same way about a lot of things. And when it was actually acknowledged and put on a presentation and actually taken to the C-suite, all of a sudden you just have this renewable energy of people thinking, wow, I'm actually finally being heard, being listened to. Now we're going to embrace the change that's going to come and we're going to move forward. So I think a lot of times as well, people just want to feel heard and and see the impact of what they're doing is actually helping them and not just adding to their workload and burden.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of your viewers might relate to this, but in Silicon Valley, one of the reasons um, a lot of those business models were highly successful is because you had the work day where individuals and or groups would collaborate and grind for the common good. And then if you're familiar with, Meta, Facebook, and the other, you know, affluent tech companies from the valley, they actually had happy hour in their offices, and it's not the conventional offices. They would actually have a bar in the building. They would have laundry service in the building. They'd have a cafeteria that was a restaurant with all you can eat, anything you wanted to eat, and nobody had to pay for it. So, so, so it's how you treat your people as within the organization, and the the valley really just valued everybody's participation, and that created the culture of buy-in. And so after hours, when people were having a beer from the keg at the bar, you know down the hall from where they work or from wherever they wanted to work, no enclosed office, that creative collaboration can come together going, God, I had a terrible day today. How about you? Well, me too. This is a problem, and then they talk about the problem. They walk through it and they relate emotionally, psychologically. They go, you think it sucks too? Yeah, I think it sucks. Are you dismayed that you have to work? Yeah, I hate working this long because I'm married and have kids. Great. Okay. Well, you know what? This should only be like 3 months. And if we do this, these wonderful things are going to happen. Our company's going to go like this. And oh, by the way, if you're in an equity stake of the organization, we all win. So a lot of that dynamic is important. But when you jail up your people and force them into cubicles and don't allow for them to openly collaborate, then maybe you need to get out into areas, outdoors, or maybe in after hours dinner, or whatever it's going to take, and just to release and to have those open and frank discussions about feelings, thoughts, and emotions about the process of change.
I love that. I've seen it work a couple of places in Europe, but yeah, I can really see how they could really support a company. Um, as your plans grow, where do you see the leadership most open or even resistant to the innovation or new ways of working?
Well, again, we're talking about the human dynamic, so change is always not their first choice. But a lot of leaders are forced to change. Otherwise, it's either lead, follow, or get out of the way. So leaders who want to lead, they're waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and they're on the grind. They're working out. They're doing the cold plunge, right? They're writing their letters. They're following up on emails. They've had a full day by noon, but and everybody else is just kind of going, "What happened to the day?" And so this change management really has to be driven by drivers, people who are, um, I have a bit of an athletic background. I was an All-American at Florida State and swam for Team USA. And one of my coaches used to always say, if you expect to be the best in the world, then you have to do things that nobody else is willing to do from anywhere in the world. And so that's your effort and your time and your commitment and your belief in what it is that you're doing. So if you have a world-class leader, you're going to have world-class results. If you don't have a world-class leader, you probably are not going to get world-class results. So where the leader goes, his motivation, his confidence exudes within the organization, and people will follow. Um, but there are leaders who are probably detractors too. Maybe they don't really want to change, but they have to change. And so they're doing it just because they want to go through the motions. Well, guess what? That's going to show up in their sales volume, profit margin, and market share, and a less than healthy EBITDA and balance sheet. And so that's just the reality.
Completely, numbers don't lie. How do you find those people? How do you take those those game changing leaders when it comes to hiring?
Well, at the entry level, from a college graduate perspective, a lot of organizations seek out student athletes because they have discipline, they have commitment, they've learned how to focus and on a primary goal and achieve that goal and maybe even win. So just at the entry level, I think as we mature within our careers, and you really can't rely on resumes anymore, let's be honest, because everybody lies on a resume. They have been since the beginning of time. If you didn't know that people lie on their resume, they even lie on LinkedIn. So, it's really about understanding the impact that they've made within their space, that it's measurable, that other human beings are saying, yeah, we worked with them, yeah, we bought that from them, yeah, we use that technology, it's incredible, it's amazing, this is how it changed us. So we have to inspect what we expect with the people around us and the people in the process and technology that we desire for our own organization.
I love that. Inspect what you expect. That's brilliant. Daniel, zooming out or looking ahead, where do you see your business in the next 6 to 12 months?
Because of our innovative nature, again, we say on our website that we're the planet's first GigCX fractional workforce and AI advisory. So people are naturally going, who are you? What do you do? And our organization provides up to 700,000 people speaking over 72 languages located globally, working from wherever, whenever, and for however long. And organizations just cannot maintain the growth in a full-time employee environment. There's way too much exposure and liability, especially when we're talking about unique events like that FEMA has involved with natural disasters, responses, tax season, where you only need maybe a few thousand people for 90 days, and then you got to let those people go. Open enrollment, another great example. Hard to staff shifts, nights and weekends, where you have call volume spikes, or we call channel volume spikes, because we meet the customer wherever they want to be met at, which is text, phone, chat, whatever that might be, email. So it's really, this, how can we get human talent, the right person on the right call or the right channel, talking to the right customer at the right time with the right training for the right price. And if we can do that, and that's what we do for organizations, is that now I get AI where I want it, how I want it, and I can get people where I want it, how I need them, for whenever I need them. And when I don't need them, I don't have to pay for it. I have no exposure and liability, no exposure to operational capital expenditures. So that's a crazy thought process for a lot of people to think about. And their natural response is to be like, it sounds too good to be true. So there's resistance. But we see the gig marketplace at a $4.5 billion space growing to be a $7.5 billion space in the next 3 years. And I think we're properly aligned to be able to give enterprises and BPOs access to as many workers as possible that are pre-vetted, screened, onboarded, and background checked, ready to work. We call them brand ambassadors a lot of time because they have access and experience with those brands. And as an advisory, we've pre-vetted all of our partners. We go through a very significant assessment. We pull back the curtains to see who's pulling all the levers. And buyers don't want to go to one brand anymore. They don't want to go to, individual brands. They want to come to an advisory like GigCX Talent. We've done all the groundwork. We've done all of the assessments, and we're a clearinghouse for this talent and technology that ultimately they want to implement. And we bring about collectively within our organization, we have over 350 years of experience within our team framework. So they've all been around the block. They've all grew up in the space. They all know the good, bad, and the ugly, and where all the bodies are buried, per se. So organizations can trust that we've been there, done that, and we can help lead them and guide them into this change and innovative marketplace called the gig and or fractional workforce industry.
Brilliant. And what do you find your biggest challenges right now?
Fear of change.
Inside your own organization?
No. Within the organizations that are unwilling to pivot or don't have or the confidence to know whether or not gig workers will fit within their culture, will fit within their dynamic. Well, if you look at the industry in total, globally, the gig industry, including Lyft and Uber and DoorDash and et cetera, it's a $1.2 trillion space. So it's already been proven that people want to work from wherever they want to work, however long they want to work, and they want to be able to select and opt into who they work for. It was really accelerated by the pandemic on when we all got sent home and we didn't have a choice. So technology caught up, had to catch up, and allowed for people to recognize and realize that the human condition, their condition, was on this day-to-day grind, and they didn't have a personal life. They didn't really know who they were themselves. They didn't have personal identity, and it impacted their personal relationships, both familial and professionally. And so it forced people to reevaluate their purpose in life. And most of them realized, I want this terminology that we use today as work-life balance. I don't want to get lost in my job and become, I'm going to be 70 years old. I'm not going to have retirement. I'm not going to have any pension. I'm going to have a weak 401k. I'm going to live off on Social Security. And I will have not done all of the things that are on my bucket list. And so now people can do that today. They can have, look, it doesn't matter. You don't have to look like everybody else. You don't need a plane, train, or automobile to even get into work. But people want to contribute for the greater good. They want to keep a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food on the table. 70% of all gig workers are female. Stay-at-home caregivers. Think in terms of wounded veterans, people who are handicapped, people who are disabled, who want to be in the workforce. But again, those mobility challenges don't allow for them to do that. In the gig economy, it allows for them to do that. They just need a laptop and a mobile phone and an internet connection. Now we're all productive. Now we're inclusive. Now we're including everybody. And again, it doesn't matter what race, ethnicity or nationality or language they speak. We all get to contribute cohesively in the human race to be able to accelerate and see the vision of ultimately what we want, which is, individual dreams, where individuals want to grow, how they want to evolve, what do they want to achieve in their lives. So the gig economy allows for them to be able to have that flexibility. And so we don't use the word employ. These are gig workers. They're independent contractors. And again, you don't have to work in a cubicle anymore to make a difference or to create a culture.
So essentially, it's a platform that brings companies that want to basically scale quickly, or if they need to burst resources, they come to your platform, and you get contractors that also come to the platform. So these are skill sets, and they've been heavily vetted. And then it's a platform that marries the two up.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the extreme examples I use is the home shopping network, where maybe you have a product that isn't so popular, so you get this many calls. Well, that's real time. Those are real human beings answering those phone calls. AI don't answer those calls. And then you get a real popular product, and then you get this many calls, right? And so how are you going to get those humans on the phone answering those phones in such a short period of time? Gig allows for you to be able to have that burst ability within intraday, intra-week, intra-month call volume spikes. So you only need them when you need them. You only pay for the productive hour. You're not paying a straight hourly wage for unproductive time, people sitting around the water cooler chit-chatting when they're not, actually working. And by the way, when gig workers are working, they're happy working because those are the hours they chose. This shows your company. They want to work for you and your brand, and they want to work these hours, and they're signed up. And a lot of times, gig workers, it's not a side hustle, it's their primary job. So they're very committed to the hours that they sign up for. And here's another unique thing: gig workers on average work for two different companies. So one can be maybe a telecommunications company, and the other one might be a healthcare company. So now I'm fulfilling both goals. Maybe I have a commitment for healthcare, but I love, I have brand affinity with my telecommunications company. So I get to work 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 3 hours a day. Maybe I work in the middle of the night. But that's my choice. Now we're empowering individuals to buy in to the organization, the culture, the mission, the values, the goals, and the change that is going to happen within the enterprise.
Do you find you lack more on the talent side of things for those individuals, those gig workers, or more on the companies that want to hire gig workers? Or do you find that there's a demand on both sides, or is there one that's lacking a bit more?
There's a certain amount of industry ignorance that exists. Sure, they're not quite sure or aren't familiar how the gig marketplace can help them, how independent contractors can impact their bottom line. I think a lot of times they think of independent contractors as, paper delivery boys, in the morning. I don't know what they think, but to be frank, we find more qualified, more pedigreed and experienced talent through the gig economy than you can within a 10-mile radius of your call center that you've cycled through, by the way, over the last 10 years. And now you're on, even 20 years. Now you're in the second generation. Now you're hiring, your employees' children now because there's just only a limited hiring pool. So gig gives you an ability to diversify your talent pool, basically. And by the way, this is wonderful. I can guarantee most organizations have no idea that you can do this, but most only speak a few languages. We have access to over 72 languages located globally, so we can be native speaking, we can be second language, primary language, skill sets that maybe these are healthcare professionals that have retired, but they still want to be in the space. So now they're still contributing to that. We have tax professionals that have been CPAs for their whole life, and now they just kind of want to work a couple hours a day. They're contributing, helping people prepare their tax returns, those types of things. So access to talent is one of the top three issues that enterprises have today. And we give them tremendous access to talent working from wherever, whenever, and for however long the enterprise needs them to work.
It's a repetitive theme that I'm seeing in a lot of clients these days is access to talent. So you nail on the head there. I absolutely love this platform. What a fantastic business model. So Daniel, well, thank you so much for sharing so openly with us. That was absolutely really very interesting and informative. Before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice that you give any other CEO navigating a rapid change? What could you advise them?
Understand why you want to change, how you want to change, when that change will occur, and who is going to be involved in that change. And then commit to it 100%. Otherwise, it could fail. And you don't want to leave any doubt in your mind within your organization that the change wasn't positive and for the greater good for your organization. Yeah, I would run through the who, what, when, where, and why analogy, and then implement that and then commit to it, just like any world-class athlete, just like any world-class leader. Know that the dollar stops with you. It begins and ends with you, actually. So be committed to it, involve all of the stakeholders, and do not neglect all of the people within your organization that are in the trenches to create and make that change happen.
So great advice there. Well, finally, if listeners want to learn more about GigCX Talent or connect with yourself, what's the best place they can do that?
Yeah, we're available on the internet at gigcxtalent.com, or Dan at gigcxtalent.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn at GigCX Talent. We have a homepage, and then of course I'm connected to that. It's also a great space to be able to read a number of articles on the subject matter of change and the gig economy, and a lot of other topics that are, work dynamics that people are going through with regard to innovation and AI. And
Well, excellent. Dan, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on board.
pleasure for having me. Thank you.